The sun had barely climbed over the skyline of the city when Emily Carter laced up her faded sneakers and stepped out of their tiny two-room apartment above the old bookstore. Her mother, Linda, was already downstairs, setting up their food cart. Linda's Love and Lunch, an aging silver stand with a crooked menu board and a coffee machine that coughed more than it brewed. Emily's long chestnut hair was tied up in a messy bun. Despite the early hour, her eyes sparkled with the kind of determination that only comes from years of surviving without privilege, but never without pride. "Don't forget the veggie wraps," Linda called over her shoulder, half buried in the cart's cramped cabinet. "These downtown people love them like they're gourmet." Emily chuckled. "Gourmet on a paper plate. That's our specialty." Their food cart sat right between two towering office buildings on East Maple Street, a place Emily had memorized every crack and corner of. She'd spent the last 3 years juggling part-time design courses at the community center and helping her mom here, rain or shine. This day, like all others, began with the scent of buttered bagels and simmering chai tea wafting into the morning air. Business people in sharp suits and shiny shoes walked by in a rush, barely noticing the small hopeful cart that served up comfort with kindness. Emily was handing a caramel latte to an overworked intern when she noticed someone across the street. A tall man in a dark charcoal coat was weaving through the crowd with a phone pressed to his ear. His steps were fast but calculated, and even from a distance, something about his presence felt different. She couldn't quite say why she kept watching. Maybe it was the tired slump in his shoulders, or the way he listened more than he talked. But in a blink, it happened. The man pulled something from his coat, and in his haste, his wallet slipped from his grip. It landed on the pavement, unnoticed. He kept walking, vanishing into the stream of pedestrians. Emily didn't think twice. "Mom, cover the cart for a sec," she called out, already untying her apron. "What? Why, Emily?" But Emily was already running. She dodged briefcases and latte cups, her heart thumping not out of excitement, but something else, an unspoken pull to do what was right. She grabbed the wallet from the sidewalk, her fingers brushing against its worn leather. No name, no logo, but it was thick, probably filled with credit cards, IDs, maybe even cash. Most people might have paused. She didn't. She glanced ahead and caught sight of his coat tail disappearing into the glass doors of the Bennett Technologies building, a name she recognized only because it was everywhere lately. Some hotshot CEO had just moved operations back to the city. Still clutching the wallet, she entered the lobby, the polished floors and sleek walls making her feel like she'd stepped into a different universe. The receptionist raised an eyebrow. "Can I help you?" "Yes." Someone dropped this outside. A tall guy, navy coat, phone call. "He just came in." "Sir Bennett," the woman said, blinking. Emily tilted her head. "Is that his name?" Before she could answer, Emily handed the wallet over with a smile. "Just make sure he gets it back." "Thanks." And with that, she turned and walked out, leaving behind no name, no number, just a good deed. What she didn't see was that the receptionist didn't place the wallet in a drawer. She picked up the internal phone line. "Sir, we found your wallet. You won't believe who returned it." Inside the glass elevator of the 30th floor, Nathaniel Bennett paused mid-sentence during a conference call. His assistant, Sarah, stood beside him, holding out the wallet like it was something sacred. "She didn't leave her name," Sarah said. Nate's brow furrowed. "She didn't ask for a reward. No, just smiled and left." He opened the wallet. Everything, every bill, every card, even the tiny photo of his late father, was untouched. For a moment his world went silent, not because he almost lost something important, but because someone he didn't know cared enough to return it without asking for anything. Who was she? Something inside him stirred, something old and unfamiliar. He needed to find her, not to repay her, but because in a world where everyone wanted something, she had given him something back without asking for a thing. Nathaniel Nate Bennett stood by his floor-to-ceiling office window, wallet in hand, staring out over the city he had returned to with a restless heart. His mind should have been filled with product deadlines, board meetings, or investor expectations. Instead, it was stuck on a nameless girl with hazel eyes, messy hair, and a selfless act that had caught him off guard. She didn't even leave her name. He asked again, still processing. His assistant, Sarah Monroe, shifted her weight uncomfortably beside him. No, just handed the wallet over and walked out like it was the most normal thing in the world. It's not, Nate murmured. He opened the wallet again. The cash was still there. So were his IDs. Even the old photo of his dad, creased and faded, tucked inside the sleeve. Not a single thing touched. But that wasn't what hit him hardest. It was the gesture. It was her eyes. The simplicity of someone doing the right thing without expecting applause. In a life surrounded by people who were always calculating, always wanting something, this girl had given him a gift more valuable than anything inside the wallet: trust. He found himself restless the whole afternoon. The company floor buzzed with activity, but Nate stayed quiet in his office, watching the security footage on loop. Her movements, her urgency, her pause at the building's threshold like she wasn't sure she belonged. Then the way she turned away, without waiting for recognition. There was something hauntingly beautiful in her presence. He zoomed in on the footage again. There, Emily Carter. The name had popped up on a small employee badge she wore from a part-time job at the nearby grocery store. He couldn't help but smile. Gotcha, he whispered, like she was a puzzle he was slowly unraveling. Across town, Emily tried to focus on washing dishes back at the cart, but her thoughts kept slipping. She hadn't been able to shake the image of that man, calm, serious, but with tired eyes that looked like they'd forgotten how to smile. Must be someone important, she muttered to herself, rinsing a coffee pot. Linda peeked from behind the counter. You've been quiet since you got back. What's on your mind, baby? Emily shrugged, just wondering if he got the wallet back. Linda raised an eyebrow. You sure that's all you're wondering about? Emily rolled her eyes, cheeks warming. Mom. But deep down, she was wondering, not because she expected gratitude, not because she wanted anything from him, but because in that brief moment, when he turned and met her eyes, even if only for a second, there had been a flicker of something unspoken, like two strangers whose stories were quietly tugging at each other, asking for more time. The next morning, Emily arrived at the cart early. The city hadn't fully woken up yet, and a soft golden light painted the sidewalks. She was setting out napkins when she heard footsteps approaching. A tall man in a gray hoodie and jeans, hands in his pockets, stood nearby. She looked up and froze. It was him. Her heart skipped. You again, she said with a nervous smile. Nate offered a small nod, his voice softer than she expected. Yeah, thought I'd try that chai you keep bragging about. She blinked. I never bragged. You didn't have to. You looked like someone who knows good tea. He smiled, and this time, it reached his eyes. Something about that melted her a little. Coming right up, she said, turning to pour. As she handed him the cup, their fingers brushed. For a split second, her skin tingled at the contact. She tried to shake it off, but it lingered. You found your wallet okay? She asked, trying to sound casual. I did, he replied, sipping. Thanks to you, I didn't do much. That's where you're wrong. He looked at her more seriously now. You didn't just return it. You didn't even open it. That's rare. Emily glanced away, uncomfortable under his gaze. It's just how I was raised, I guess. Nate nodded slowly. Your mom must be someone special. She is. They stood in silence for a beat, the city slowly coming to life around them. The air felt heavier than the moment, fuller, brighter. So, Emily said, trying to lighten the mood. Do you always track down strangers who return your wallet? Nate smirked. Only the ones who make me forget I'm supposed to be at a board meeting right now. She laughed, surprised by the flirtation in his voice, but it didn't feel forced. It felt like sunlight cracking through gray clouds, and maybe, just maybe, something had begun. Something quiet, gentle, and not yet named. The next few days passed in a strange rhythm. Neither Emily nor Nate fully understood. Every morning, like clockwork, Nate would show up at the cart, hoodie pulled up, sunglasses hiding his eyes, as if the disguise could make him invisible in a world he actually ruled from a high rise. He would order the same thing each time, 1 small chai, 2 sugar cubes, and a spinach and cheese wrap. Emily had memorized it after the second visit. He never said much, but what he did say always lingered longer than it should have. Morning, busy day ahead. You always smile when you pour the tea. Do you realize that? It was simple talk, harmless, but to Emily, it was beginning to feel like something more. He was clearly someone different, not just in the way he dressed, but in how he listened, like he heard her silences louder than her words. One chilly morning, Emily arrived early, her breath fogging up in the cold air. She found Nate already there, leaning against the lamp-post across from the cart, hands in his pockets like he'd been waiting. You're early today, she said, surprised. So are you. She smiled. Weird coincidence. Maybe, he replied. Or maybe I just didn't want to miss your chai. Her cheeks turned warm. There it is again, that tone, that look in his eyes. As she handed him his cup, he spoke again carefully, like he was testing the waters. You ever wonder what's outside all this? Emily tilted her head. You mean outside of tea carts and noisy crosswalks? Yeah, like if there's something bigger you're meant for. She hesitated. Every single day, he studied her. What would you do if you could do anything? She laughed softly, unsure why she was telling him this. I'd design children's books, illustrate them too. My mom says I used to draw entire stories on the walls when I was 5. Nate's expression changed. Something in him flickered. Admiration, maybe, or regret for the time he'd spent chasing millions, while forgetting to dream. Sounds like something worth doing, he said gently. Emily shrugged. Dreams are expensive. Nate didn't argue. He knew that all too well. Later that night, he sat in his penthouse office, long after everyone had left. The windows reflected the city lights and his own reflection, polished, successful, lonely. He hadn't meant to keep going back to her food cart, hadn't planned on learning how she always tucked her hair behind her ear when nervous, or that her favorite artist was someone named Lisa Congdon, or how she used humor to shield the fact that she was hurting more than she let on. But now that he knew those things, he couldn't unknow them. She didn't know who he was, and he didn't want to tell her, not yet, because for the first time in years, someone was seeing him. Not the company, not the headlines, not the money, just Nate, and that made it terrifying and thrilling. The next morning, he didn't come by. Emily noticed. She didn't admit it out loud, but she found herself glancing toward the sidewalk every time someone approached. By noon, her mood had shifted. Something about his absence bothered her, more than it should have. He's just a guy who buys tea, Emily. Don't be ridiculous. Still, she missed his quiet voice, the way he asked questions like he genuinely cared, the way he made her feel visible. She was closing up when a familiar voice startled her from behind. I had a board meeting. I hated every second of it. She turned relieved and surprised. Nate stood there, holding a single white daisy. Her heart skipped. For you, he said, offering it to her. I figured I owe you at least 1 flower for making my mornings bearable. Emily laughed, taking the flower. You're weird, and you're honest. That's why I keep coming back. She blinked, unsure what to say. So, Nate rubbed the back of his neck. I was thinking, there's this community exhibit at the company I work for. Some cool design stuff.
Maybe you'd like to come see it. Emily looked surprised. Are you inviting me to your office? He chuckled. Not my office, just where I work. Nothing fancy. She hesitated. He looked at her, eyes soft. No pressure, just think of it as a break from this sidewalk. Finally, she nodded. All right, but only if there's more chai after. His smile stretched wide, genuine, boyish, vulnerable. Deal. The sun was just beginning to sink when Emily stood nervously in front of the tall glass doors of Bennett Technologies, clutching the invitation Nate had scrawled on a napkin. 3 p.m. Ask for me at the front desk. Nate, the chai guy. She had spent an hour picking out her outfit, finally settling on a clean, ironed white blouse and her best pair of jeans. Simple, comfortable. Still, she felt entirely out of place among the flood of people in suits and heels walking into the building like they belonged. Emily hesitated at the steps, swallowing the nervous lump in her throat. Was this a mistake? But then she remembered his smile, the way he handed her that daisy, the way he listened like nothing else in the world mattered. Okay, deep breath. She stepped inside. The lobby was grand, sleek, and polished to perfection. The marble floor reflected the hanging lights above like mirrors, and the air smelled faintly of citrus and money. Emily approached the front desk, her palms slightly sweaty. Hi, I'm here to see Nate. He said you'd be expecting me. The receptionist looked up from her monitor, scanning Emily's jeans and modest tote bag with thinly veiled judgment. Her smile was professional, but hollow. Full name of the employee. Emily blinked. Just Nate. He didn't give me his last name. The receptionist's eyebrow arched. And you are? Emily Carter. A pause, then a short clipped nod. Please wait here. Emily stood awkwardly near the wall, feeling the weight of stares from passers-by in suits, their gazes brief but unmistakably curious. Some whispered, one even chuckled. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and tried not to fidget. Just then, the elevator doors opened, and there he was, Nate, not in a hoodie, not in sneakers, but in a navy blue tailored suit that looked like it cost more than her monthly rent. His hair was swept neatly to the side, and he walked with the quiet confidence of someone who owned the place, which of course he did. Her breath caught. Why didn't he tell me? Emily, he said, smiling as if nothing had changed. Nate, her voice cracked slightly. You came. Yeah, but you work here? She asked, trying to keep her voice neutral, but the weight of the place was starting to sink in. He didn't just work here, he was here. She could see it in the way the receptionist suddenly stood straighter. Nate stepped closer. Let me show you something. They rode the elevator together. Emily was quiet, stealing glances at him in his suit. You clean up nice, she said, trying to mask the tremble in her voice. He chuckled softly. You're not too bad yourself. She looked down at her outfit. I feel like I should have worn a blazer or something. You're perfect like this, he said without hesitation. Her eyes met his. For a second, the elevator felt too small, too quiet, too alive. He led her into the tech exhibit space, a wide, modern floor filled with interactive art, digital design panels, AI-generated illustrations, and prototype workstations. Emily's eyes widened. It was like walking into a dreamland for a creative mind. This is incredible, she whispered, stepping toward a glowing wall, where a digital brush moved in real time with hand gestures. It's part of our community outreach program, Nate explained. We partner with young artists, coders, and designers, help fund their education, help them build portfolios. We're opening a new round of scholarships next month. Emily turned to look at him. You do all this? Some of it. I just try to give people chances I wish I had at their age. She saw something shift in his expression, just for a moment, like he was revealing a part of himself he usually kept locked away. They moved from screen to screen, talking about color palettes, motion design, interactive storytelling. Her enthusiasm blossomed, and Nate drank it in like sunlight. At one panel, Emily reached out to adjust a setting and accidentally brushed Nate's hand. Both froze for a fraction of a second. "Sorry," she whispered. "Don't be," he said, his voice lower now. Their eyes locked again. That unspoken current between them, once flickering, was now burning gently beneath the surface. As they stepped back into the elevator at the end of the tour, Emily finally broke the silence. "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" Nate looked down, his fingers tapping lightly against the brushed steel wall. "Because I liked being just me, not the CEO." Outer headline, just Nate. Emily bit her lip. "I don't care about any of that, you know." He looked up slowly. "I know. That's why I didn't want to ruin it." Silence hung between them again, thicker, heavier, more vulnerable. Then softly, she asked, "Is that what this is? Something you don't want to ruin?" Nate took a breath, searching her face. "I don't know what this is yet. But I know, I've looked forward to every morning I've seen you. I know, you're the first person in a long time who's made me forget I'm supposed to be someone important." Emily's heart pounded. She didn't respond, not with words, but when the elevator dinged open, she stepped out beside him, their arms close enough to touch, and for the first time, neither of them pulled away. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. The soft hum of the city outside her window faded in and out as her thoughts raced like a runaway train. She kept replaying the afternoon over and over, Nate in a tailored suit, the digital exhibits glowing around them, the sincerity in his voice when he said, "You're perfect like this," and that look in his eyes. It wasn't just kindness, it wasn't just politeness, it was something deeper, something that made her feel like the world had quietly shifted without asking permission. The next morning, Emily opened the cart a little later than usual. Her mom, Linda, had already prepped the tea and sandwiches. She looked at her daughter with narrowed, amused eyes. "You've been humming all morning." "I have not," Emily replied, pouring the chai too quickly and spilling some over the edge. Linda grinned. "That the rich boy from the building still coming by?" Emily gave her a look. "He's just a friend." Linda smirked. "The last time you called someone just a friend, you spent 3 weeks writing poems in your sketchbook." Emily flushed. "That was in 10th grade, Mom. Still counts." Before Emily could protest further, the man in question appeared again, hoodie on, sunglasses slightly tilted, coffee in one hand, and his signature crooked smile on his face. "Morning, ladies," Nate said. Linda raised her brows, clearly sizing him up. Well, the tea guy returns." "I never left," he replied smoothly. Emily handed him his usual order, barely meeting his eyes. "Rough morning." "Not anymore," he said softly, and only she heard it. Her cheeks burned again, but before she could say anything, Nate pulled a neatly folded paper from his pocket. "I want to show you something," he said, sliding it across the counter. "When you get a minute." Emily opened it. It was a printed flyer for a community design fellowship, backed by Bennett Technologies. The description read, "Full sponsorship, mentorship, real-world creative work, open to non-traditional applicants, no degree required, only raw potential." Her eyes scanned the page slowly. "Is this your company's?" He nodded. "It's something we started last year. We've only awarded it to 2 people so far." She looked up. "And you want me to apply?" "No," he said. "I want you to have it." Emily froze. "What?" she breathed. "You have the eye, the passion, the creativity, and more importantly, you have something even rarer, integrity." "But," she held up the flyer, like it was burning her fingers, "I don't even have a full portfolio. I never went to college. I sketch on grocery receipts, Nate, and some of the best artists started exactly like that." His voice was calm, but firm. He wasn't offering charity, he was offering belief. Emily looked away, blinking hard. The pressure in her chest swelled, like something too big for her ribs to hold. "I don't want this because you, like me," she whispered. Nate leaned in, his voice low and serious. "I'm offering this because you deserve a chance, whether I feel something for you or not." which, for the record, I do. Their eyes locked. Something unspoken sparked and held. I just don't want you to think this is about pity or guilt, she said, barely louder than the city behind her. It's not, he said. It's about faith. A long silence settled between them. It wasn't awkward. It was intimate, like they were standing on the edge of something, and neither wanted to move too fast, too soon. Finally, Emily folded the flyer and slipped it into her tote bag. Okay, she whispered. Nate's eyes softened with relief. Okay, I'll consider it. He smiled. That's all I ask. That evening, Emily sat under the flickering streetlight outside her building, holding a worn sketchbook in her lap. Page after page was filled with drawings she had never shown anyone, not even her mom. Characters she'd invented, scenes from stories she imagined, worlds where girls like her could be anything, astronauts, queens, even heroes. She flipped to a blank page and drew a boy with a coffee cup in one hand and a daisy in the other. She titled it, The Stranger Who Saw Me, and for the first time in a long time, Emily allowed herself to dream. Meanwhile, Nate stood on the rooftop balcony of his penthouse, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. The city glittered below, like broken glass, scattered across velvet. Sarah, his assistant, approached from the sliding door behind him. You really think she's the right fit? She's more than the right fit, Nate said, without looking back. She's everything this program was meant for. Sarah hesitated. And if people start talking, let them, Nate said quietly. She's not here for them. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the cool breeze on his face. She's here for her, and I'm just lucky I got to see her before the world did. Emily stood once again in front of Bennett Technologies, but this time it felt different. She wasn't here for tea. She wasn't here as a stranger. She was here as a potential designer. The weight of that realization felt enormous. In her hand, she clutched her sketchbook, its corners worn soft from years of handling, pages filled with her most personal, untouched dreams. And yet, as she looked up at the sleek glass building, her palms were slick with nerves. Her reflection in the doors looked too ordinary for a place like this. Don't let the shine scare you, she whispered to herself, remembering Nate's voice. You belong here just as much as anyone else. Still, as she stepped inside, the luxury hit her in waves. Glass chandeliers, marble floors, sharp clicks of designer heels, and elevator pings echoing through the lobby. This time, she didn't stutter at the desk. I'm Emily Carter. I'm here for the design mentorship program. The receptionist, a different one today, looked her over, trying to hide her surprise. But this time, Emily didn't flinch. A security badge was handed to her. Temporary pass, guest of Mr. Nathaniel Bennett. That name, it still didn't feel real. The elevator took her to the 22nd floor, the design and innovation department. As the doors opened, she stepped into a space alive with color and creativity. Walls painted with interactive screens, desks strewn with prototypes, brainstorming charts, and 3D design samples glowing softly beneath LED lights. Emily barely had time to admire the space before a thin, sharp-voiced woman approached her. You must be Emily, the woman said. I'm Claire, head of visual design. Nate mentioned you were joining us for the day. Claire's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. We don't usually bring in non-professionals, but Nate seems to think you have potential. Emily's stomach dropped. The tone was polite, but the implication clear. You don't belong here. Still, she nodded with a steady voice. Thank you. I'm excited to learn. Claire gestured toward a workstation. You'll be observing the team today. Just try not to get in the way. The hours crawled. No one was cruel, but the distance was undeniable. Designers spoke over her, not to her. Jargon flew like confetti. She wasn't invited to catch. She asked a few quiet questions, but her voice barely registered. At one point, she reached to adjust a color panel during a demo, and someone scoffed. We don't use that kind of palette here. This isn't street art. The word stung. Her hands went still. She hadn't realized just how different she was, how visible. Lunch came. No one invited her.
She slipped outside, sitting on a bench near the glass wall, sketchbook in her lap. She tried to draw, but found her pencil shaking. For the first time in years, her art felt like a mistake. "You okay?" She looked up, and there he was, Nate. No suit today, just a black sweater, sleeves rolled, a concerned crease between his brows. Emily tried to smile, but it cracked at the edges. "Yeah, fine. Just taking a break." He sat beside her, without asking. "They've been cold, haven't they?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I get it. I don't look like them. I don't talk like them. You're not supposed to." His voice was low, but certain. "You're not here to be them, Emily. You're here to change what this place looks like, and you're already doing that, just by being here." Her eyes watered. "You don't know how hard it is to walk into a place like this, and not feel like an imposter." Nate turned toward her. "You're not an imposter. You're a reminder." She blinked. He continued. "A reminder that talent and vision don't come from privilege. They come from truth. And you've got that in every sketch you make." She was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out her sketchbook. "I want to show you something." Nate watched as she flipped through the pages, storyboard-style scenes of a little girl growing up in a neighborhood that looked like hers, facing judgment, self-doubt, but always pushing forward. At the end, the girl stood on a stage, presenting her art, not to applause, but to herself. "I've never shown this to anyone before," she whispered. Nate's gaze didn't move from the pages. "It's beautiful." She turned a page. "It's raw. Exactly why it's beautiful." Their eyes met again. Something hung in the silence, charged, delicate, powerful. Nate spoke first. "You want to finish the day, or do you want to create something with me instead?" Emily looked surprised. "You mean like together?" He smiled. "I want to know what your world looks like when you're not shrinking yourself to fit in." She didn't hesitate. "Let's do it." Back in Nate's personal studio, hidden behind sliding walls that looked like a modern art piece, they sat at a long drafting table, laptops, sketch pads, and AI monitors spread before them like a shared canvas. They talked, drew, laughed. For the first time since walking into the building, Emily felt seen. He watched her work like it was a performance. She explained her color choices, storyboards, character designs. Nate added subtle touches, complementing her vision, not overtaking it. They were in sync, and somewhere between a shared color palette and a soft laugh, Nate looked at her like he was falling, and didn't want to stop. "You have no idea how rare you are," he said. Emily met his gaze, her chest fluttering. "I'm just a girl from a food cart." "No," he whispered. "You're the girl who made me want to build something real." For the first time in a long time, for the first time in her life, Emily Carter sat at a conference table, worth more than her entire year's earnings. It was sleek, modern, with chrome legs, and a glowing touchscreen center. Around her, senior creatives and tech specialists buzzed with excitement. A new campaign was being brainstormed, a mix of digital design, AI-generated storytelling, and real-world emotional connection. But Emily, she was silent, watching, observing. Nate had brought her in. "This is Emily Carter," he had introduced, just minutes earlier. "She's joining us as part of the creative development team, under our new community talent initiative." It was a lie, but a kind one. The fellowship hadn't officially started yet. Nate had fast-tracked her, and that decision was already starting to echo in whispers. Emily could feel the eyes on her, the glances, the unspoken questions. Why her? Who is she to him? Claire, the same sharp-tongued lead designer from her first day, leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. Nice to have, fresh perspective, she said with a sugary tone that didn't match her narrowed eyes. Nate didn't flinch. Exactly. Emily brings something we've been missing. Raw vision, real-world voice. He looked at Emily, his gaze soft but confident. Would you mind showing them the piece we worked on? Emily's hands trembled slightly as she opened her sketchbook, heart pounding. But then she remembered his words. You're not here to be them. You're here to change what this place looks like. So she stood and spoke. She showed her storyboards, each frame alive with emotion. A little girl running through alleys, drawing stories on walls. A mother handing her daughter tea while whispering dreams. The contrast of poverty and hope, of color against gray. It wasn't polished, but it was powerful. When she finished, the room was quiet. Not dismissive quiet, stunned quiet. Claire cleared her throat. It's unconventional, but unforgettable, someone else whispered. Nate broke the silence. That's the direction we need. For the first time, Emily allowed herself to smile, not because she impressed them, but because she knew she'd earned it. Later that afternoon, as the room cleared, Emily packed her things slowly, giving the others space to leave without awkwardness. She didn't want more whispers behind her back. She didn't want to be the CEO's pet project. But then Nate appeared beside her. You were brilliant, he said softly. She looked up at him. I'm not sure they all agree. They don't need to. She hesitated. Are you sure this isn't a mistake, pushing me forward like this? He leaned in slightly. Emily, your vision, it's the most honest thing that's come through this floor in years. You don't need permission to take up space here. The air between them charged, quiet, close, heavy with the almost of something waiting to bloom. She lowered her gaze. You're risking your reputation for me. I'd risk more than that, he said, before he could stop himself. Emily's breath caught. There it was, the unspoken finally touching the surface. She didn't respond, not yet, but her silence was louder than a yes. The next day, it was raining softly when Emily arrived at the cart, umbrella in one hand, the other gripping her phone as she scrolled through a message from Nate. You changed the room yesterday. Thank you. I want to talk tonight, over dinner, somewhere quiet. Her heart skipped, but before she could reply, she noticed two sharply dressed women nearby, at a neighboring coffee stall, whispering with their phones out. One of them pointed at her. She's the one, the other said just loud enough for Emily to hear. The food cart girl. Word as she's got Bennett wrapped around her finger. Emily's stomach turned, not because they were cruel, but because they were right, at least about how it would look to the world. Was this what it meant to climb higher? That every step forward would come with whispers behind your back? That evening, she met Nate at a quiet rooftop restaurant downtown. The air was cool, lights soft and golden. He had reserved the entire corner for privacy. She arrived in a simple navy dress, hair down, nervous. You look like someone who belongs in every room she walks into, Nate said as she sat down. Emily smiled, but it was small, faint. He noticed immediately. What's wrong? She looked down at the table, fingers playing with the napkin. People are starting to talk. He leaned back. Let them. They think I'm using you, that I'm only here because you care. And what do you think? She paused. I think you do care, and that terrifies me. Nate's jaw tensed, not in anger, in fear, fear that she might pull away. You don't have to be afraid of that, Emily. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm not trying to control your path. I'm just trying to walk beside me, she said quietly. He nodded. Exactly. A silence settled between them. Then she looked up, her eyes softer now. I'm not afraid of you, Nate. I'm afraid of me, of liking this, of liking you, and forgetting who I was before this. Nate reached across the table and gently took her hand. You don't have to forget who you were, he whispered. You just have to believe that who you are right now is worth being seen. And I see you. Her eyes filled with quiet tears, not because she was hurt, but because maybe for the first time,
Someone loved her not in spite of her scars, but because of them. Emily tried to focus. She really did. But no matter how many sketches she drew, or how many deep breaths she took in the quiet corner of the design floor, she could still hear the voices, their voices echoing from the hallway. I don't care how creative she is. Everyone knows why she's here. It's not talent. It's who she's sleeping with. She was serving tea 2 weeks ago. Now she's pitching campaigns. Laughter. Dismissive. Cold. She sat still, her pencil frozen in midair, as if even the lines she wanted to draw were second-guessing themselves. Her fingers curled tightly around her sketchbook. Later that afternoon, she passed Claire near the elevators. "Enjoying your VIP fast pass into the creative world?" Claire asked with a smile that cut deeper than any scowl. Emily stared at her, then turned away without a word. But inside, her heart was breaking, not because of what they said, but because part of her believed them. That night, back at the apartment, Linda found her daughter sitting on the floor, surrounded by torn pages from her sketchbook, crumpled, shredded, ruined. "Emily," she gasped, kneeling beside her. "What happened?" Emily looked up, eyes hollow. "I don't belong there, Mom." "Is that what they said?" Emily didn't answer. She didn't have to. Linda pulled her close, brushing her hair back gently, like she used to when Emily was a child with scraped knees and big dreams. "Sweetheart, you earned that place with your own hands. Your art, your story. But I'm not one of them," Emily whispered. "Good," Linda said firmly, "because the world doesn't need another one of them. It needs you." But the next morning, Emily didn't go to Bennett Technologies. She didn't answer Nate's texts. She didn't respond to his calls. Instead, she stayed home, curled up in bed with a blanket wrapped around her like armor, trying to forget how it felt when his fingers gently touched hers across the table, or how his voice made her believe in something she'd never dared hope for. Meanwhile, in the corner office overlooking the city, Nate stared at his phone, his thumb hovering over her name. No reply. He had noticed the shift the day before. How her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, how her shoulders tensed every time someone passed behind her. And now, this silence, it wasn't just distance, it was retreat. His jaw tightened. He stood abruptly, and left the room. 20 minutes later, Emily heard a knock on the apartment door. She opened it slowly, and there he was. No suit, no assistant, no chauffeur, just Nate, hair messy, eyes tired, chest rising fast like he'd run every step to get there. "I was worried," he said breathlessly. Emily didn't step aside. "I didn't mean to scare you." "You didn't scare me," he replied. "You hurt me." She blinked, stunned. "You just disappeared," he said, "and I didn't know if it was because of something I did, or..." "It wasn't you," she whispered. Nate's voice cracked. "Then why are you running?" "Because I don't want to be the reason people question your credibility." "They already do." "That doesn't bother you." He stepped closer. "No, what bothers me is that it bothers you." Emily swallowed. "You're not the one being whispered about. You're not the one they look at like you're a charity case, or a scandal waiting to happen. And you're not the one who wakes up thinking about a girl who doesn't believe she's enough to be loved without apology." Her breath hitched. "I don't care what they say, Emily. I care what you say." He took another step closer, gently placing a hand on the doorframe beside her. "Are you saying you don't feel something when we're together?" She looked away. "Are you saying I made it all up?" he asked, voice lower now. "That I imagined the way your eyes soften when you talk about your dreams, or how my heart beats faster when you laugh like you forgot the world owed you nothing?" Emily's eyes filled. "Don't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because if I believe you," she whispered, "then I have to admit that I want this too." Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then she said softly, "But I don't want to be someone you save." Nate shook his head. "Then don't be." She blinked. "Don't be someone I save. Be someone I choose over everything else." Silence stretched again, thick, fragile, sacred. Then Emily slowly stepped back and opened the door wider. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay," he echoed. I'm not promising it'll be easy. Nate smiled gently. I'm not promising it'll be perfect. She looked up at him, tears shining in her eyes. Just promise me, it'll be real. And he did, not with words, but by reaching for her hand and holding it like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. The following week moved like a quiet storm. Emily returned to Bennett Technologies, head held high, heart pounding with every step. The whispers didn't stop. If anything, they'd grown louder. But this time, she didn't let them break her stride. She wasn't there to prove herself to them anymore. She was there to prove something to herself. But Nate, he was done pretending, done hiding. The opportunity came sooner than either of them expected. Bennett Technologies was hosting its annual Future of Design Town Hall, a major internal event broadcast across all departments and streamed to external investors and stakeholders. A stage, a crowd, lights, cameras, and a microphone. Nate stood backstage, reviewing the final presentation slides. Sarah approached him, her tablet in hand. You sure you want to go off script like this? She asked cautiously. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, he said. She gave a small nod. Then say it like you mean it. Emily stood at the back of the large glass-walled auditorium, with her guest badge around her neck. She hadn't planned to attend, but when Claire casually said, I'm sure you weren't invited, it's mostly for professionals, something in Emily refused to stay home. She wasn't here to be petty. She was here to stand tall, even if she felt like her knees were trembling. Nate walked on stage to polite applause, dressed in his usual sharp suit, but his expression was softer than it had ever been. Less CEO, more human. Thank you for being here, he began. We've achieved incredible things this year. Our teams have built immersive design tools, community tech programs, and platforms that are now being used by thousands of creatives across the country. A round of applause. But, today, he continued, voice steady but slow, I want to talk about something else. A murmur spread across the room. This wasn't in the program. I want to talk about who we create for, why we build, and who we overlook in the process. Emily leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on him. He clicked a button. Behind him, a drawing appeared on the screen. Her drawing, the little girl running through colorless streets, paintbrush in one hand, dream in her eyes. Gasps rippled through the crowd. This was made by someone who didn't go to design school. Nate said, she didn't have the luxury of internships or degrees. She had a food cart and a pencil. And a heart bigger than any resume I've ever read. The crowd was stunned. Nate kept going. You've seen her, maybe whispered about her, maybe questioned why she's in our halls. I'm here to answer that. He turned away from the crowd, toward the screen. I met her not in a boardroom, but on a sidewalk. She picked up a wallet I dropped, and instead of stealing from it, she chased me down for blocks just to return it. No name, no expectation. He turned back to the crowd, voice growing warmer, and in that moment, I realized something. In a world where everyone takes, she gave. In a room where people compete to be seen, she sees others. He scanned the faces in front of him. She didn't need a degree to earn this place. She already had what most of us spend years searching for. So, now it wasn't just shock in the room. It was stillness, respect. He let the silence hang, and then just loud enough for the microphones, but low enough to feel intimate. He added, her name is Emily Carter, and I'm not just proud to work with her. I'm proud to know her. Emily couldn't breathe. Her hand trembled against her heart. The tears came before she could stop them. Hot, quiet, overwhelming. Every buried fear, every cruel whisper, every moment she felt small, undone in a heartbeat. And not because he defended her, but because he saw her, completely. When the presentation ended, and the crowd dispersed, Emily stayed frozen in place. People walked past her with new expressions, not judgment, but curiosity, maybe even admiration. Then Nate appeared, walking straight toward her, ignoring the crowd, ignoring the murmurs. Just her, as if she were the only one in the room. Hi, he said softly. She shook her head, blinking away tears. What was that? The truth, he replied. I didn't ask you to do that. I know, that's why I did it. He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't hesitate. You shouldn't have to hide, he said. Not who you are, not what you mean to me. Emily stared at him, her heart thudding so hard it echoed in her ears. I've never had anyone fight for me like that, she whispered. He smiled gently. You never should have had to fight alone in the first place. And in that moment, Emily realized this wasn't just a romance. It wasn't just about art or design, or stolen glances over tea. It was about home, and somehow, impossibly, she had found it in the last place she'd ever expect. A man in a suit, with a heart like hers. The rain had stopped, but the streets still shimmered, as if holding on to the light just a little longer. Emily stood at the corner near her apartment that evening, her hood pulled over her head, as she waited for the bus. She didn't hear him walk up behind her, didn't need to. Something in her heart already knew. I thought you might be here, Nate said softly. She turned to find him. No chauffeur, no umbrella, no expensive coat, just him, a little drenched, a little breathless, but smiling like he didn't mind a single drop. You really have a thing for showing up uninvited, she said with a small laugh. I could say the same about you, he teased. You showed up in my life like a whisper, and then wrecked every wall I'd built. Her breath caught. He was still holding her hand from the town hall earlier, and now, without the eyes of the world on them, he hadn't let go. Oh. I didn't mean to cause trouble, she said. Nate tilted his head. You didn't. You are the reason I'm finally becoming someone I actually like. Emily looked down, trying to hide the way his words bloomed something inside her, something soft and slow and steady. But Nate wasn't done. I want to know everything about you, he said, voice low and sincere. What you loved as a kid, what makes you cry, what keeps you up at night. She smiled gently. That's a long list.
Then I guess we better start now. She raised an eyebrow. Over wet sidewalks? Or, he said, nudging her playfully, over the best chai in the city. I was thinking, your cart. 20 minutes later, they were sitting on mismatched stools behind Linda's Love and Lunch, 2 steaming cups in hand, the smell of cinnamon and spices rising like nostalgia. Emily's mom, Linda, stood by the griddle watching them closely. Her arms were crossed, lips pursed, not with judgment, but with motherly protectiveness. You didn't tell me the tea guy was the CEO of a tech empire, she said, narrowing her eyes at Emily. I didn't know at first, Emily replied, blushing. Nate looked up at Linda and offered a disarming smile. Guilty as charged. Linda raised a brow. You got a resume, Mr. Fancy Suit. Actually, tonight I'm just a guy trying to win your daughter's heart. So, if the resume helps, I make a mean grilled cheese, and I volunteer at shelters on Sundays. Emily choked on her chai. Oh my God, Linda didn't smile, not yet. Instead she handed him an apron. Prove it, she said. And so Nate Bennett, Forbes featured CEO, found himself behind a food cart griddle, trying to flip grilled cheese sandwiches without burning them. Emily watched, biting her lip to hide her laughter. You're holding the spatula wrong, she said. I'm holding it differently, he corrected. Linda watched him closely. You ever cleaned grease off a stove? Hot shot. I've built operating systems, not the same thing. Figured, but instead of shrinking, Nate leaned into the moment. He listened, learned, took instructions, burned 2 sandwiches, got flour on his shoes, laughed like a boy. And Emily, she saw something she hadn't known she needed. A man who didn't just visit her world, he respected it. As the night wore on, the 3 of them sat on the curb together. The cart closed, city lights twinkling in the puddles. Linda took a sip of her tea and looked at Nate. You love her. Nate didn't flinch. I'm trying not to rush what's real, but yes, I think I'm falling in love with her. Emily's breath caught. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to. It wasn't a grand gesture. Grand gesture. It wasn't some dramatic confession under a spotlight. It was simple, sincere, and it shattered the last of her defenses. Later, when Linda went inside, and the street quieted, Emily turned to him. You meant that? I did. She hesitated, then reached for his hand. I think I'm falling too. They didn't kiss, not yet, but they sat there under the stars, hands entwined, hearts wide open. And for the first time in both their lives, they didn't feel like they had to earn love by being perfect. They just had to be. The city skyline was bathed in golden twilight as guests filed into the Bennett Foundation annual gala, a prestigious event known for glamour, philanthropy, and high society. Emily stood just inside the grand ballroom entrance, trying not to let the shimmering chandeliers or designer gowns overwhelm her. Her soft burgundy dress wasn't couture, but it hugged her frame just right, and her curls were loosely pinned, framing her face with elegance and warmth. You okay? Nate asked, walking up beside her in a classic black tux, his eyes full of reassurance. I feel like someone's going to ask me to park their car, she said with a nervous laugh. Nate chuckled and leaned in. You look like the reason half this room is holding their breath. Emily glanced at him, her eyes softening. You're always saying the right thing. I'm not trying to say the right thing, he said, brushing her hand with his fingers. I'm just saying what's true. Their hands brushed again, and this time she didn't pull away. The evening flowed with speeches, auctions, and performances, all benefiting community art and design programs, the very initiative Emily had helped inspire. Nate had dedicated the entire gala to launching the Create from the Core Fellowship, a national grant for aspiring artists from underserved communities. Emily had helped design the logo. The promo film included her sketches, but what she didn't know was that the night's most powerful moment was about her. As dinner plates were cleared, the spotlight shifted to the main stage. The MC announced, and now, a few words from the man behind the mission, Nathaniel Bennett. Applause filled the room as Nate stepped up to the microphone, but his eyes were on only one person in the crowd, Emily. His voice was calm but full of emotion. Tonight is about giving back. It's about opening doors for those who never had them. But this night wouldn't exist without someone who reminded me what art, truth, and humanity really mean. Whispers spread. Nate continued. Months ago, I met someone. She wasn't in a boardroom. She wasn't part of a portfolio pitch. She was at a food cart, handing out sandwiches and hope with every cup of tea. People turned toward Emily now. She could feel the warmth rising in her cheeks. Her heart pounded. She returned something I lost. Not just a wallet, but a belief I'd forgotten. That kindness could be quiet. That brilliance could be hidden in plain sight. That a girl without a title could still shake the foundation of everything I thought I knew. He paused, then smiled. Her name is Emily Carter, and I'm proud to say she didn't just inspire this program, she inspired me. The room burst into applause. Real, full, thunderous. Emily sat frozen, her eyes shimmered. Nate stepped away from the mic and walked down the steps, straight toward her. As he reached her table, he offered his hand. Will you join me? He asked. Emily blinked through her tears and stood. Together, they walked back to the stage, and Nate gently handed her the mic. Emily looked out at the crowd. Her voice trembled as she began. I never thought I'd be standing here. I didn't grow up with connections or confidence. I grew up watching my mom hustle to sell sandwiches, and I learned to draw on napkins in between shifts. The crowd listened closely. I thought people like me only existed on the edges, but someone saw me, not for what I lacked, but for what I carried.
Her eyes flicked toward Nate. I'm here tonight because someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and if I can do that for someone else now, then all of this is worth it. Another wave of applause, but this time, it felt like the room was clapping for her, not just the cause. After the program ended, Nate led her out onto the balcony. City lights danced on the river below. The night was cool, the stars soft behind velvet clouds. You're amazing. You know that, he said, watching her lean on the railing, wind tugging gently at her hair. I was so scared, she admitted, and you still showed up, he replied. That's what makes you braver than anyone in that room. She turned to him, her heart beating fast. Nate, he stepped closer. No big speeches this time, he said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small velvet box. Emily gasped, but he quickly opened it to reveal a delicate silver ring, with a simple stone and tiny engraving on the inside. Found, seen, chosen. It's not an engagement ring, he said, gently taking her hand. It's a promise that I'll keep seeing you, that I'll keep choosing you, not just in private, but in front of the world. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Nate, he smiled. So, will you wear it, as a reminder of who you are, who you've always been, even when you forget? Emily nodded, voice breaking. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and this time, when he leaned in, she met him halfway. Their kiss was soft, slow, not a spark, but a homecoming. 1 year later, the neighborhood had changed, not in appearance, but in spirit. On the corner, where Linda's Love and Lunch once stood alone, now stood a beautifully restored, 2-level brick building, with hand-painted murals that told a story. Emily's story. Children chasing kites, a girl sketching in the margins, a single white daisy blooming from concrete, a silver ring, gently glowing, under painted stars. Above the entrance was a simple wooden sign, the Create from the Core Center, Art, Hope, Voice. Inside, dozens of students, ages 10 to 25, sat in cozy rooms with sketch pads, digital tablets, clay tools, and paint-stained aprons. There were no uniforms, no entrance exams, only creativity and courage. At the heart of it all was Emily Carter Bennett, no longer hidden, no longer apologizing for who she was. She stood in front of a small group of young girls, showing them how to use color to express emotion. She said, "You don't have to be loud to be powerful. Your voice can be in your lines, your light, your story." And they listened, not just because of who she'd become, but because they saw themselves in her. Later that afternoon, she walked out to the garden courtyard, where her mother Linda was tending to a row of wildflowers along the walkway. "You still prefer dirt over a desk, huh?" Emily teased. Linda smirked. "Plants don't whisper behind your back." They both laughed. "I never imagined this," Emily said, looking up at the mural of the little chai cart in the corner of the wall, "that this could grow from us." Linda wrapped an arm around her daughter. "That's the thing about roots, sweetheart. They grow deep before anyone sees the bloom." Meanwhile, just a few blocks away, Nate stood at a city council meeting, with rolled-up blueprints and a proposal. "We're not asking for luxury," he said firmly. "We're asking for access, for a safe creative space in every underserved neighborhood. We want kids to see art as a voice, not a privilege." They approved the expansion, unanimously. Nate walked out into the sun with a soft smile, and a hand already dialing Emily's number. That night, they returned to where it all began. The old food cart, still preserved and polished, sat in the back garden of the center, a tribute to a time when all they had was tea, sandwiches, and stolen glances. It had been transformed into a quiet little nook, surrounded by fairy lights and wild jasmine. Emily and Nate sat on a bench nearby, hands intertwined. "Do you miss the chaos?" she asked. "I still live in it," he said, "but now I get to come home to this." She leaned her head on his shoulder. They sat in silence for a moment. No need for grand words. Then a little girl ran across the path, dropped a coin, and kept running. Emily stood, picked it up, and instinctively ran after her. "Hey, sweetheart." The girl turned. Emily knelt down, holding out the coin. "You dropped this." The girl took it shyly. "Thanks." "You're welcome." "Are you the drawing lady?" the girl asked. Emily smiled. "Some days." "Yeah." The girl grinned and ran off again. Emily turned back to Nate, eyes shining. "That felt familiar," he said with a chuckle. "Full circle," she replied, heart full. Later that night, under the same stars where they once kissed for the first time, Nate sat beside her on their rooftop, sipping chai from old mismatched mugs. He took her hand and quietly placed something in her palm. It was her old pencil, worn down, chewed on the end, the one she'd used the day they first designed together. Wrapped around it was a note: "To the girl who redrew my whole world." Tears welled in her eyes. "You remembered." "I never forgot." She leaned into him, the night folding around them like a secret. And they stayed that way. Not perfect, not glamorous, but whole, because they had built something not from money or status, but from truth, honesty, gratitude, and a moment on a sidewalk that had changed everything. And so the girl who once returned a stranger's wallet found a man who returned her faith, not in fairy tales, but in real love.